What was the quickest way you've seen a new manager screw up a workplace? Came in, took over a department, decided to get rid of people who were contractors, even if they'd been there for 3+ years. Didn't care what they did, just axed them. A month later, critical systems were failing, and the people left there just shrugged. He'd axe the people who knew how those systems ran. This happened to me. I worked part-time remote for a web design boot camp that got bought by a huge corporation. Corporation decides they don't like part-timers and fires us all. I'm like, how are you gonna do all the work of like 15 part-timers with 2 full-time staff? I'm told not to worry about it. 6 months later, I'm asked to take on 10 hours of grading per week because they're hugely understaffed. Sure, I like the job and it's easy money. But now the one full-time lecturer for this program needs time off, and they need someone to sub for him. Oops, we all have full-time jobs now. Best of luck. We had a dude I'm going to here called Benny. Benny had been a corporate dude and decided he wanted to run a location instead. Corporate agreed and gave him the location I work at. It was clear almost immediately that Benny was a helicopter manager. He would show up unexpectedly and hover. He'd nitpick. He'd ask weird questions. He'd send out lengthy rambling emails about goals he had for us as a team. One morning as my overpass was ending, he arrived unexpectedly, pulled me into his private office, and had an hour-long conversation with me where he revealed he'd been watching me, and that he knew I did video editing. I was creeped the fuck out, but admitted that yes, it was something I enjoyed doing periodically as a hobby, alongside a bunch of other creative pursuits. He replied that he wanted me to make a music video starring karaokes to lift the morale of the team. I replied that I'd think about it and got the fuck out as soon as possible. My direct supervisor revealed that she had overheard him talking about firing the entire staff and rehiring from scratch. I told my girlfriend that I was considering quitting based on how the next team meeting went. That evening, I got an email to the tune that Benny had been forced by corporate to resign. He had been caught acting like a fucking sociopath and that in his 1-month tenure employee morale had reached an all-time low. It's been a few years since Benny left, but I remain paranoid about him still to this day. Had a manager get promoted who read a self-help book about business communication and decided that is what we need. She hired them to give us a day-long seminar at 8:30 AM to 4:30 PM on a Saturday. People pushed back. She responded by sending out an email that this is mandatory now, and if you were going on vacation you have to show her proof of that. Then there was a couple of rambling emails about how she is trying to help us and cannot believe no one would want to do this, and that when her kids throw tantrums, that they need guidance. The day of the seminar the manager showed up in the morning to give us a pep talk. The person running the seminar asked if she was going to stick around today to see our progress. Manager said no, because her weekends are family time with her, and that is sacred to her. Then she said goodbye and good luck, and walked out the door. Within weeks people were finding other jobs. In 6 months more than 70% of the people at that seminar were gone. Guy gets hired as a supervisor, worked on a Disney cruise before, so he thinks he knows how to run a bar. During his interview he points out to a few staff how they're doing minor things wrong. Somehow he's hired and immediately starts making changes, getting mad whenever anyone does something other than his way. Meanwhile he's rarely seen on the floor, rather, he's in the office creating cocktail guidebooks while it's extremely busy at the bar. Got into an argument one night where another supervisor who wasn't working at the time got a bit drunk and told him he never helps out and how everyone disliked him. He tries to get said supervisor fired. It backfires and everyone complains about him instead. This all took place in the span of a month. I quit shortly before he was fired. Our team had a 15-minute break at 10 AM. We always had done. Our new manager arrived, and it turned out this break wasn't actually official, so he stopped it happening. The place very quickly fell apart. It basically required people ignoring the rules to get things fixed. Working into lunch was very common, or staying behind a little bit late to get a job done. So when this break happened we stopped going above our job description and did it to the letter. They had to spend a fortune calling in contractors to fix things that we had been fixing but weren't supposed to. Jobs got delayed constantly because we would pack up and leave to go to our lunch breaks exactly on time or drop a job halfway through to go home exactly at finishing time. We were a pioneer account. The account was a huge US telecommunications company that handed their department to be outsourced to our center from another that fucked it up. We were excited. For the first 6 months, we flourished so much that the company thought it was a good idea to make our operations manager move to another location to get him to improve that. So he replaced our the old that handled the account at the other center who fucked up. Basically ran the account to the ground in less than 6 months. Kept hiring more and more people. Only promoted people he liked. Job assignments weren't clear. People kept being reassigned. At the end we had over 500 employees and he had to fire 300 of them because the account only needed 200. The company suffered a lawsuit and lost the account. I worked as a cook in a restaurant in a country setting. American food, burgers, fries, some simple seafood/steak specials. Nice food, but simple and easy to prepare, and filling portions for the price. They lost their head chef on short notice and we were chefless for a month or two. The new guy they brought in wanted to change everything. He wanted to redesign the kitchen, which it did need, and which was planned. But then he started talking about getting rid of the burgers on the menu, getting rid of the deep fryer. Started trying to sell these little vegetarian ornately plated small dishes for high prices. Ordering little flowery garnishes, and telling the cooks they were all going to need to buy their own $50 pair of plating tweezers. Started hiring, one by one, employees from his old restaurants, creating this weird social divide between his cult followers and the existing employees who know that a hard-working farmhand will not pay $18 for some steamed beets with herb goat cheese smeared on the plate. Not many people were very happy. He didn't last long. I feel a little bad for those employees who jumped ship to follow him only to be let go when he was maybe a month later. 4 or 5 weeks. Certainly less than a month. They forced 3 of the most senior staff into resigning and replaced them with their mates who didn't have a clue how to do any job, let alone the one they'd been hired for. This led to several other people, myself included, finding work elsewhere, so suddenly there were only 3 people who knew how the debt worked, and they were all actively looking for work. The department lost a £20 million contract. The 3 members of staff who had been forced to quit eventually won constructive dismissal cases against the company, costing the company another £250,000 in compensation between them. The manager and all his new employees were terminated at the end of their probationary period, and the company desperately tried to encourage a bunch of us to come back. Although the pay rise they offered was so insulting, I don't think anyone did. I had a manager named, we'll say Larry, when I worked for an airline. He only lasted a few months, but came in boasting about his prior experience with another company. Over time, he grew increasingly stubborn and it all culminated with one particular plan that he was convinced would save us by routing all of our baggage to a single conveyor belt line. All of us supervisors, and I mean all of us, explained to him that his plan was not going to work, since we knew there were going to be 500 plus bags for several flights in the span of a few hours coming down that line, and we did not have the staff or the space to work on that belt, and it was guaranteed to jam. We had the numbers, we had the on-the-ground experience, everything. I tried to talk him out of it in a last-ditch effort since I was the one who had to physically make the change in the computer, and he shut me down almost immediately. So, the plan was a go. It failed so spectacularly that not only did I immediately get a call and message from him on the morning of my day off, the start date, but his manager called me requesting that I make any necessary changes to remedy it, as well as several other high-up individuals. He was let go within the week. I worked at a restaurant all throughout high school and bit into college during breaks. My manager at the time was awesome to work with. So much so I suggest that she hire my youngest sister when she can start working as my sister and I share the same work ethic, and I knew she would love it there. About a year into me leaving and my sister hiring on, the owners asked the manager I knew to move to another store to save their sales, which she did. To replace her they put a manager from another store that was being shut down in the helm. What was his first act as a manager? Well, to get rid of all the current employees that the regulars knew and requested by name over a period of time and hire the employees that were left out to drive from the previous store. This, quite surprisingly to him, didn't work out well for his sales. His team was nowhere close to being as welcoming as the team I worked with and that my sister started working with. He clearly favored his team too. He really didn't understand the concept that a customer was fine with their meal and didn't need to be checked up on every 5 minutes personally. I'm sure there were other things that I'm not aware of, and I don't need to know these. Eventually I went in and was talking to a former coworker. She told me she was pulled off to the side by the owners and asked to step in as manager effective immediately as the store was not doing well under the new manager. I congratulated her for the early promotion, and within a week the store was doing its old sales just like it used to under my former coworker's management. She's rehired those workers that wanted to come back and has since hired some younger waiters/waitresses and new back of house folks who are so much more friendly and make the restaurant worth stopping into.